Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. We're continuing to talk this week about balancing self-government and centralization. Now, this week we're going to be focusing more on what do we do? How do we keep that balance? And especially with where we are right now, centralization, which again is not a bad thing. It just has to be kept in balance. Centralization right now is creeping up in dominance over self-government, over individual rights. So what do we do? That's what we're going to talk about. And again, with this, our text for this has been from Romans chapter 7. We've used a couple different verses. But in essence, it is the idea and the concept that every human has a sin nature. We have a fallen nature. Romans 7:23 puts it this way, "But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members." So again, Paul here identifies that there is a law of sin. There is this nature inside of each one of us, because we're descendants of Adam, that ultimately, as he says earlier in chapter 7, it causes us to want to do things that we know is not right. And it pushes that agenda. Now, the thing is, as power grows, as a person has more power, then if they do not have self-government, if they do not have good management of themselves. I've heard people say that money doesn't change people. Money just reveals people. In other words, what they already were, they now have the money to do. And that's very true, because ultimately, again, it comes down to this. If you have self-government, if you have control of yourself and you get additional money, power, whatever, then you're able to manage that with your self-government and do well with it. I know a number of people that they have wealth, they have power, and they have self-government. So they're not like some of these people. But at the same time, we all are aware of people that do have money, do have power, but they have no self-government. And so they do this, they do that, they do the other thing. And until they get to a place where they have self-government, their lives are going to be what most of us would consider erratic. They're just following their whims and their wishes because they have the money to do it, they have the influence to do it, and so that's what they're going to do. Well, again, you put that from just having an individual with power to you put that person in a centralization aspect where they are overseeing something that has become so centralized that now not only are they directing their lives, they are affecting so many, major corporations and some of them hundreds of thousands of people. And if that person does not have good self-government, it can create all kinds of problems. Now, it might be that they have good self-government in dealing with the company, but then they want to leverage. They want to leverage that power in other areas. And at that point, a very easy target here is Hollywood. Actors and actresses who, because they make the money that they do and are famous, very often, and I'm not saying that they don't have the right to speak out, but they tend to speak out in very condescending ways, like they're better than everyone else, and they are trying to use their position to largely intimidate other people. Now, at that point, just because they're doing well that they can act, that does not mean that they understand any of these other things. It does not mean that they have self-government, and Lord knows a lot of them there do not. They do not have self-government, and it's just they're trying to influence things in a certain direction. And you see that even in corporations. But what we have to do, again, is we have to promote self-government. Self-government. Ultimately, with the founding of our nation, when we fought against England in the Revolutionary War, and we were establishing our own nation, and if you would, the 13 colonies were trying to create some centralization. The United States of America, they were endeavoring to create some centralization, because if they couldn't create it, then that was going to be a problem. You know, Benjamin Franklin famously said during the debates about the Declaration of Independence, and when they were trying to determine all that, he said, surely we must, he said, we must all hang together, for surely if we do not, we shall all hang separately. And at that point, they were seeking to create some centralization. But when they formed the Constitution, and there was an understanding of what unalienable rights were, but in the process of that discussion, a number of people would not sign off on the Constitution without a listing of the rights of the individual. Because their statement basically was, there may come a day when people do not understand what their unalienable rights are, and we need to list them. And that's how we got the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. It was a listing, in addition to what is in the Declaration of Independence, it's a listing of the unalienable rights that the centralized government does not have the right to violate. And so, again, the Founding Fathers, in desiring to create some centralization for the security of the nation, understood that it had to be balanced with self-government, the rights of the people. And at that point, there are so many today. We have to defend the Bill of Rights. We have to stand for the Bill of Rights, because so much that is happening with centralization right now is, well, you know, this needs to change. Well, you know, that was fine when the country was founded, but now we're in a different place. Now, all of that is, again, promoting centralization over the self-government, over the rights of the people. And those have to be balanced. It has to be balanced. If you would, if self-government is too powerful, then it creates anarchy and chaos. If centralization is too powerful, then it creates oppression on the people. And those are just givens. It will always go that way. We have to continue to pursue centralization, but what we have to do in this environment is we have to understand that the Bill of Rights, the things that were listed there, freedom of speech, even when we disagree with the speech, there needs to be freedom of speech. Because again, that's part of what sets off the centralization. You know, during COVID, and if you've read any of the Twitter files, if you would, about what was being done during that time, there was proactive squashing of anything contrary to the governmental approach to things, that free speech was being eliminated. And you might say, yeah, but these people were doctors, experts. They were squashing the opinions of doctors and experts that didn't agree with them. The only way that you can counterbalance centralization is with the rights of the individual, self-government. Freedom of speech has to be defended. Freedom of speech has to be defended. A very easy one, contrary to what a lot of people think, the right to bear arms has nothing to do with squirrel hunting. It has nothing to do with providing food for your family. That is not why that was put in there. It was put in there so that the people, if necessary, could form a militia against the government. Now, I'm sure that some people will think I'm a heretic and I'll probably have to go on some kind of list now. But that's what it was in there for. If you would, Hitler, when he was advancing, Switzerland was an easy target, but everybody in Switzerland had a gun. He would have to fight from house to house to house, and every individual would have fought him. He bypassed Switzerland, not because it was neutral and willing to stay out of it. Well, that would be an easier target than somebody resisting you. No, he knew all the people were armed. Same thing is true during World War II. Japan actually made statements that they would not invade America because everyone in America had a gun and they would have to fight everyone. That's why they bombed and left. And they didn't want to invade. They knew they could not win that type of a battle. And you see, ultimately, armed citizens is for the protection of the nation. It is for the protection of the people. And historically, that has always been the case. And anyone that tells you anything different is actually, look up their sources. Look in our own country right now. You look at the places with the highest violent crime. They are the places that have the strictest gun laws. Where there's right to bear arms and it's not really restricted, that happens much less, much less. You say, well, what about the mass shootings? Again, if you take it as a whole, where there are weapons, there are less deaths than where gun laws are extremely rigid. A lot more. I mean, basically Chicago almost has mass shootings every week based on the number of people and that get shot and killed because they're just individuals, but they have some of the strictest gun laws. Well, what happens in those cases? Well, as we all know, the criminals still have them and the law-abiding citizens don't. And it creates issues and it creates problems. The only way you can counterbalance centralization is by supporting the rights of the individual, by supporting the rights of self-government. That has to be done. We have to be standing for the Bill of Rights and opposing anything that would remove any of the Bill of Rights from our lives. God bless you. Talk to you tomorrow.